physicality, durability, longevity. He was an 11-time NHL All-Star, 3-time Norris Trophy winner, World Cup of Hockey gold medalist, and 3-time Stanley Cup champion. He was a player who you'd love to play with on your team, but hated to play against. He was a player who played on that fine line, making sure you kept your head up anytime, anywhere. A true warrior, his work ethic and competitive nature allowed him a triumphant career that lasted well into his late 40s. Standing at 5'11", 191 pounds, he's the godfather of American hockey, Captain America, number 7, number 24, Chris Chelios.
Chelios scores! Chris Chelios has done it again, and the Hawks move on to the conference final.
Christos Kostas Chelios was born on January 25, 1962 in Chicago, Illinois. He found a passion for the game of hockey early on, but after moving to California with his family, he wasn't able to play high school hockey, losing out on a few critical years of development as he remained unknown to American colleges. His only scholarship came from United States International University in San Diego, but his teammates were all bigger and more experienced, and young Chelios was eventually cut from the team. He contemplated quitting hockey for good, but no, he was a competitor and he wasn't going to go down without a fight, so he looked north to Canada as he sought to carve out a future in hockey. He wanted to play on the regular, but after being cut on 2 separate occasions by Junior B teams, it appeared that this was it. There was no future. As Chelios recalls, the situation got so dire he had to borrow money from complete strangers just so he could return to California. But those who know Chris Chelios know he wasn't ever going to be the one to back down, and thus he trained and trained as he ended up growing 3 inches and gaining 40 pounds of rock-hard muscle, and an 18-year-old Chelios was ready for some unfinished business in the land of the North. Chelios would go on to play for the Moose Jaw Canucks of the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League, transforming himself from a player who nobody knew to one of the top leaders of his team. And in the 1980-1981 season, which was his draft-eligible year, he registered 87 points in 54 games, prompting the Montreal Canadiens to select him in the 1981 NHL entry draft in the second round, 40th overall. Chelios would continue his development playing for the Wisconsin Badgers over the next 2 seasons, as he became one of the top players in college hockey, as well as a mainstay on both the American Olympic and Canada Cup teams in 1984. He was finally getting the recognition he deserved. The year 1984 also marked the year in which he was able to crack the Montreal Canadiens roster, despite failing the season before. Chelios, contrary to his later reputation as a rugged defensive defenseman, started his rookie season as a player with high offensive potential. With the nickname Soft Hands Chelios, he registered 64 points in 74 games in his rookie season, as well as 10 points in 9 games and a staggering +17 ± rating in the playoffs. He was named to the All-Star team that year, showing his dominance, and he lost out to only Mario Lemieux for the Calder Trophy as the Rookie of the Year. In the following 85-86 season, Chelios was reduced to 41 games, but he would return to play in all 20 playoff games as he helped a rookie Patrick Roy and the Canadiens capture the Stanley Cup that year. The following few seasons saw Chelios bloom into one of the world's top defensemen, in which opponents hated playing against. He was aggressive, oh was he aggressive, as he battled for every inch, every loose puck, every moment of the game. He never made it easy for his opponents. He was industrious, as he regularly put in a hard shift to get the job done. He was hard-working, as he was always the first one on the ice and the last off of it. He always showed up to training camp in tip-top shape, and this work ethic became contagious up and down the lineup. But perhaps most importantly, Chris Chelios always made adjustments to his game. Time and time again, he faced challenges, but he'd always adapt to the situation in order to overcome it. And due to these characteristics, a 21-year-old Chris Chelios went on to score a career-high 73 points in the 88-89 season, and coupled with a +35 plus-minus rating, he went on to win his first of 3 Norris trophies as the top defenseman later that year. In the 1989 playoffs that very same year, fans will remember Chelios for his dirty elbow on Brian Propp in Game 1 of the conference finals that rendered him concussed. Chelios became public enemy number 1 as the Flyers targeted him on numerous occasions, but just look at him, it didn't faze him one bit. He knew his role, and he happily received that punishment as his team advanced to the Stanley Cup Finals that year, only to lose to Calgary in 6. Even though the Canadiens were unable to secure that championship that year, there was no denying it. They possessed a premier number 1 defenseman in Chelios, as he co-captained the team in 1990 and was just about to enter his prime. But then, the unimaginable happened. June 29, 1990, the Montreal Canadiens traded their star player and a second-round pick to the Chicago Blackhawks for future Hall of Famer Denis Savard. For the Canadiens, they wanted a number 1 center who could match up with the other elite centers in the game. For the Blackhawks, they wanted to move from Savard due to injury troubles as well as friction between player and coach. For Chelios, even though he had no say in the outcome of the trade, it was a dream come true for him as he was able to move back home and play for his hometown Chicago Blackhawks. Chelios would spend the next 9 seasons in Chicago, notably leading the Blackhawks to the Stanley Cup Finals in 1992, ultimately losing out to the Pittsburgh Penguins in 4 games. His dominance over this period and his consistency solidified him as one of the best defensemen to ever play the game, as he won the Norris Trophy twice more in 1993 and 1996. Chelios would continue his dominant play, but with the departure of star teammates Ed Belfour and Jeremy Roenick, the Blackhawks were starting to struggle in the 1998-99 season, and they were clearly headed for a rebuild. A now 37-year-old Chelios, who had been the captain of the team since 1995, had decided to go down with the sinking ship. In his book, Made in America, he goes into detail how the trade unfolded. Long story short, he wanted to stay in his hometown playing for his hometown team, but the Blackhawks organization forced his hand to accept a trade, and on March 23, 1999, Chelios would be dealt to longtime rivals the Detroit Red Wings for Anders Eriksson and 2 first-round picks. In Detroit, with reduced responsibilities playing alongside a cast of Hall of Fame players and championship-caliber role players, Chelios continued to contribute, regularly deployed as the shutdown defenseman, and in 2002, he led the league with a +40 plus-minus rating as he went on to win his 2nd Stanley Cup 17 years after his first. By the year 2005, Chelios was already 43 years old, and he was reduced to a role player within the team. They say you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but his passion, his competitive nature was second to none, and it allowed him to carry on. He was not done yet. His experience and work ethic didn't need to be taught, and he would go on to sign a series of 1-year contracts with the Red Wings as he went on to capture his 3rd Stanley Cup in 2008, becoming the oldest active player to capture the trophy. Chelios would split time between the big leagues and the minors over the next couple of seasons, and in 2010, at the age of 48, he would announce his retirement, putting an end to a legendary 27-year career, finalizing his place as the 2nd oldest player to ever play in the NHL. Chelios continues to hold the record for regular season games played by a defenseman with 1,651. He made the playoffs in 24 out of the 27 seasons he played in, playing a record-setting 266 total playoff games, along with registering over 1,000 NHL points in his illustrious career and leading the USA men's hockey team to the 1996 World Cup of Hockey Championship, as well as the silver medal in the 2002 Olympics. Chelios was inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame class of 2013, officially becoming one of the greatest to play the sport. Chris Chelios will be remembered for his hard-nosed style of play and his longevity. He might not have had an abundance of height, but he had an overabundance of heart. Time and time again, you'll see him punch well above his weight class, like the time he fought Bob Probert, or when he shut down Eric Lindros, or the time he faced Todd Bertuzzi during the 2002 playoffs. Losing out on 4 inches and 55 pounds, a 40-year-old Chelios continued to battle for space in a space, frustrating Bertuzzi to a lowly 4 points that series. And my gosh, what a battle that was. My most absolute favorite memory of Chris Chelios was in Game 3 when Bertuzzi had him lined up for a bone-crunching hit. Vulnerable position, helmet popped off, probably dazed, but there was no embellishment, no self-pity. He just got back up and kept on battling. And that, more than anything, defined Chris Chelios for me. He was a scrapper, and he wasn't going to back down from anyone. And it is with this in which we should all take a lesson from Chris Chelios. So many times did he show up to a new environment only to realize he wasn't good enough. It happened in junior, and it happened in the NHL as he navigated through his 20s, into his 30s, and into his late 40s. The game changed, the speed, the contact, the rules, they all changed, but there was one constant, and that was Chris Chelios. He always made tweaks in his game. Not strong enough, he showed up the following year with more muscle mass. Too small to play defense, he shifted his attitude and became the physical, intimidating player we know him as. Getting too old, too weak to play as a 40-year-old in the NHL, he showed up in the best shape of his life. We see on the surface how he continued to play until the age of 48, but what we don't see was a player who was not afraid to make adjustments, and that ultimately allowed him to change with the times. Just like Chris Chelios, always adapt and always come back stronger, and you too will find success in whatever you set out to do. Thanks for watching, bye.